An undercover video an interview with a teacher claiming he keeps an Antifa flag in his classroom and encourages students to take part in protests. Tonight, parents are outraged. The district is investigating.
Mom of a 4th grade student at Reedham Elementary in Mountain's Edge says his substitute teacher stepped way over the line when the 9-year-old failed to properly wear his mask in class.
He went to get a sip of water, forgot to put the mask on. Teacher then did not tell him to put it back on or send him to the office. She instead pulled him up in the front of the classroom in front of all of the students, and she then taped the mask across the top of his face.
The mom says the sub added a second layer of tape from his nose to his forehead, and with tape still on his face, he went to the office to pick up homework he'd forgotten at home, and his dad dropped off.
When he went to the office to pick up that homework is when one of the administrators noticed the tape on his face.
Alarmed, that administrator took the tape off of the child and alerted the principal, who went to the classroom to investigate, filling out this report.
And she saw another student, who she thought was my son, with tape on their face as well.
This mom later asked her son, had other students also had their masks taped to their face? He said yes. It's been happening in his classroom since the beginning of the school year.
He says that he remembers up to 5.
This is a horrific set of ideas that implies that the United States founding principles were racism, that things like being on time and working hard and doing your job, that these are somehow white characteristics, which if they are white characteristics, then it seems like white supremacists would be a pretty great bunch of people who would be pretty productive that you'd want to be around. I mean, the whole thing is just backwards nonsense. You all know that, but in some places in the United States, they're actually officially putting it into schools, and in other places in the United States, they're actually getting rid of it. So we've got some quotes here from the Federalist, and this starts us with Washington State. As several states move to ban toxic critical race theory from indoctrinating students, the state of Washington is leaning in. The race-obsessed framework isn't relegated to schools in Seattle, where you'd expect a victim-centered ideology like critical race theory to flourish. Thanks to the state's Democrat-controlled legislature, a trio of bills just signed into law mandates critical race theory training for all public school teachers. Another even requires training for medical students, teaching them that it's essential to be social justice activists as it is to treat patients. Staffers learn that black people cannot be racist because they don't have power, that whites benefit from white privilege even if they experience high poverty, and that virtually every American institution is founded in white supremacy. Okay, so Washington, you're not a good place. I say that with all due irony. I'm here in California, not a good place either. But understand that systemic racism, the stuff that Joe Biden was talking about in story number 1 that doesn't really exist, they are the ones putting it into the system. They are going to train a generation of young people through training a generation of teachers that somehow black people can't be racist. I mean, Jamel Hill is a racist. All of the people pushing critical race theory are racists, right? We know this. If you can be a racist. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care for these semantic games that they want to play. If you're a black person and you want white people to be treated differently under the law, and you don't like white people just because of the color of their skin, you're a racist. And same goes, if you're a white person and you don't want black people or whatever it is, you're a racist too. Like, stop playing these. We're all playing these ridiculous semantic games with these people who would never.
And, you know, when you hear words like phrases like equitable outcomes and, you know, equity thrown into, you know, every single policy that your school board puts out, it's you know, if it walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. Quack, quack.
What are you guys talking about regarding you're on an enemies list or a hit list?
Yes, we started going to school board meetings last summer, wanting our children to return to school, all children, not just our children, all children.
Okay.
And when we started speaking about that and about critical theory, one of our school board members called for the Parents Against Anti-Racism to rise up and help her, and they decided to put together a hit list which called for calling us racist and doxing us.
Okay.
And that's what she did.
Yeah.
And
All right.
she put things out there and where we worked and where our children went to school and put our names on a hit list.
Right, and I understand. Right, exactly. It's terrible, and I understand law enforcement is now looking into it. In your public schools, the teachers and the school boards more worried about social justice than actual in-person learning.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's been beyond frustrating. I am a part of the group, like Alicia, who, started this grassroots kind of movement last summer to really try to lobby the school board and to come with solutions. And, they have time to do all kinds of social justice projects when, in my opinion, there should be one item on their agenda every week until my kids are back in school 5 days a week.
Parents at a local private school in Manhattan were fairly surprised to find their children being encouraged to stop using terms like mom, dad, and parents in an effort to make the campus a more welcoming and inclusive space. Now, the school in question is called Grace Church School. They have 2 campuses in Manhattan, and they teach children from grades K through 12. And what they did was they issued a 12-page inclusive language guide which recommended that students, staff, and parents remove harmful assumptions from the way that they interact. For example, this guide teaches that instead of saying mom, dad, and parents, it's better to say grown-ups, folks, family, or guardians, because these new terms do not contain assumptions about what a typical family looks like. In fact, here's what the guide states. Families are formed and structured in many ways. At Grace Church School, we use inclusive language that reflects this diversity. It's important to refrain from making assumptions about who kids live with, who cares for them, whether they sleep in the same place every night, whether they see their parents, etc. Now, furthermore, this guide went on to say that the term traditional family is outdated, and that we actively try to undo notions of a typical or normal family structure. Each family is unique. Now, when it comes to the topic of gender, this language guide recommends that teachers not address students as either boys or girls, ladies and gentlemen, or even as generically guys. Instead, it recommends gender-neutral terms like people, folks, friends, readers, or even mathematicians. Furthermore, when reading books to children, adults are encouraged to take gender out of the text wherever they deem it unnecessary. For example, the guide suggests that they can say child, person, or character instead of saying, for instance, the boy on this page. Now, when this guide reported about a month ago that the Oregon Education Department, the education department for the entire state of Oregon, was promoting a training program that helps teachers develop an anti-racist math practice. They are trying to make math less racist. Now, specifically, what they did was they sent out an email newsletter which urged all middle school teachers to register for a class that was titled A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction. Now, in that course, a toolkit is distributed to all the teachers, which states that in order to achieve this equity, what needs to happen is a visualization of the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture with respect to math. Now, having read that, you might be asking yourself, what exactly are these alleged toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture within the realm of math? Well, according to the toolkit, among many other things, they include a focus on getting the right answer, again this is in math, students being required to show their work, and teachers treating mistakes as problems by equating them with wrongness. Now, the toolkit then goes on to further say, in reference to setting the focus on getting the right answer, that upholding the idea that there are always right and wrong answers perpetuate objectivity as well as fear of open conflict. And as an antidote to this problem, teachers in this course are recommended to have their students come up with at least 2 answers that might solve a problem. That way, students can challenge standardized test questions by justifying answers other than the one that's right by unpacking the assumptions that are made in the problem. Now, furthermore, according to this toolkit, teachers are also expected to learn to distinguish between a mistake and a misunderstanding because white supremacy culture shows up in math classrooms when addressing mistakes. Now, one interesting thing to note here, although the entire story is interesting in my opinion, is that the toolkit actually links to a workbook titled Dismantling Racism as reference material. And in that workbook, there is a section which claims that only white people can be racist in our society, because only white people as a group have that power. Now, what's going on here in Oregon is not an isolated incident. Instead, this is just another example of critical race theory being pushed into America's social and cultural institutions. And what exactly is critical race theory? Well, basically, it is an outgrowth of the European Marxist school of critical theory. And what it does, what critical race theory does, is that it labels the very foundations of the American system, such as things like rationalism, constitutional law, as well as legal reasoning, as tools of racial oppression. And at the moment, it is getting a lot of traction among institutions here in America, especially in schools. In fact, just a few weeks ago, a high school football coach over in Massachusetts, he was fired after he raised concerns over critical race theory being taught in his daughter's 7th grade history class. What happened there over in Massachusetts was that this football coach emailed a list of concerns about his daughter's world geography and ancient history class to members of the school's committee. What concerns specifically did he have? Well, among other things, students in that class were instructed to identify police officers as a risk to black people and to identify black males as a risk to white people. And after this football coach was fired, he filed a lawsuit against the school district, alleging that the instruction their daughter was received in world geography and ancient history was unrelated to the ancient history and world geography subjects described on the public school website. Instead, the instruction concerned issues of race, gender, stereotypes, prejudices, discrimination, and politics. Now, if you would like to read more about
urging the development of culturally responsive teaching in American history and civics, and holding up the widely discredited New York Times 1619 project as a model. Now, of course, the big lie of the 1619 farce is that America is a systemically racist country, and they go from there. Well, these themes are already being echoed in schools nationwide. As I referenced earlier on Friday, we told you about the Marxist indoctrination happening at the elite Stone Ridge School in Bethesda, Maryland. Public schools, though, they're just as bad. Take, for example, nearby Langley High School in the affluent McLean, Virginia suburb of D.C. Students have been learning from home for the better part of a year, and yet this is how Principal Kim Greer welcomes them back to campus. Despite the jubilation we feel about returning to in-person learning, the pandemic has been framed by social strife. 1 year ago, our country supported the Black Lives Matter movement, and names were remembered such as Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Okay, the whole country supported Black Lives Matter? Wow, okay. Well, students were also asked to complete an online survey written by 3 Langley teachers. I have asked someone of a different race where they're from. Checkbox, yes or no. In response to BLM and Stop Asian Hate, I have wondered, what about other racial groups? Shouldn't we care about them as well? Again, yes or no. I believe that privilege based on skin color is a myth. Again, that's a yes or no. I have referred to the coronavirus as the China virus before. I have tried speaking English with an accent, for example, Southern U.S., British, Australian, etc. Yes or no? Oh, and this gem, this is my favorite. I think my Asian peers are really good at math. Apparently, saying yes to that is really bad. At the end of the survey, the students are instructed that if they answered yes to any of those questions, that could be considered a microaggression. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, students were
explosive comments in a guest lecture to medical students back in April.
I had fantasies of uploading a revolver into the head of any white person that got in my way, scaring their body, and wiping my bloody hands as I walked away relatively guiltless. What did I do like that? Like I did the world a favor. The white people are out of their minds, they have been for a long time. We are asking a demented, violent predator who thinks that they're a saint or a superhero to accept responsibility. It ain't gonna happen. They have 5 holes in their brain.
The psychiatrist claims she was taken out of context and was speaking metaphorically, and Yale is now backtracking, saying in a statement that those comments are antithetical to school values, but the university was well aware of the speech and reportedly restricted online viewing after it happened. So, Dana, it seems like the doctor needs a doctor.
Right, so this class that she was teaching was one that would allow you to get your licensing credit. So it's one of the ones that you had to take. So this is the kind of thing that is allowed, right? So if you wanted to become a psychiatrist, you could go to this lecture and take her class. As I read that entire interview that she did with Bari Weiss, and I have to say, like, to me, I'm not a psychiatrist, obviously, but I was like, this person is insane. And the fact that Yale tried to suppress views, like, where have we heard that before? Like,
Yeah.
Is that censorship? Like, is that wrong? That they knew that it could cause them a big problem. I can't imagine that they want this kind of person there. Now, some people might say,